The previous basket is under review.
Welcome back to Stats by Will and Jim, a college basketball podcast that focuses on the numbers. I'm your host, Jim Root, joined by Will Warren. As always, we are proudly under the Basket Under Review umbrella. So please check out the site and the Discord if you have not yet. It is the best college basketball community going on the internet. Only $10 a month gets you access to the website, all kinds of great written content there, and the Discord where you've got Trilly Scoops. You've got a lot of internal discussion on teams, coaching carousel, potential transfer portal entrance, betting every single day. Whatever it is you enjoy about college hoops, the Discord has it and the website has it. So make sure to check out Basket Under Review if you're just listening to this and not yet a subscriber. If you already are a subscriber, tell a friend. We always appreciate that as well. Will, welcome. We have got a week of basketball under our belts here. How are you feeling about the season so far? We obviously will discuss numbers that jumped out to you, but just a general vibe check for you a week into the year.
Vibes have never been better, baby. I beat COVID. I whipped its ass. Let's go.
There we go.
So when we last recorded on Tuesday, I told you it felt like allergies to me because I was like sneezing, I watery eyes, all of that. My wife had tested positive for it like 2 days prior. And then Tuesday night, I tested positive. So no marathon for me. It's okay. But we're back. I got my first run in today. A week out where the vibes are great. The basketball's been really good too. I know, we haven't really had, I'm aware, Florida, Arizona, Arkansas, Michigan State. We haven't Kansas, UNC. We haven't had like a ton of great matchups yet, but we have had a lot of good and interesting ones, which I think is a solid way to start the season. They don't always have to be, and I'll note, like in college football, week one is sort of the same thing. You have like, you'd say 3 premier marquee games, and then a lot of like pretty good ones surrounding to go with a lot of, patsy games. But I was pretty happy with the quality of games, and as we'll get to, really happy with the quality of offense I'm seeing so far.
Yeah, there's a lot of scoring. I think Ken Palm wrote about it in his newsletter. We will discuss it a little bit here on this show. And my take of it not being the most efficient college basketball season from the take purge is not aging well. That is not looking good so far. Scoring is up. Efficiency is up. That's okay. We're going to survive. Will, I know you also did not get to see IU Indy live. So what's worse, not being able to run the marathon or not getting to see that frenetic craziness live and in person at Hinkle Fieldhouse?
They're calling it the worst thing to ever happen in human history, to me specifically. As the protagonist of history, I would say it was pretty bad. But we did have a Discord member use my tickets. So I don't recall. Awesome. It's somebody in the Butler chat. So I hope they had a good time and enjoyed the game. I bought those tickets off of some reseller like weeks ago. So I hope he enjoyed his free seats, 6 rows behind the IU Indy bench. So
there you go, folks. If you're in the Discord, you've got a chance of getting free tickets from one Will Warren himself on the rare instance he gets COVID and can't make his marathon. So that's always a potential perk of being in the Discord. To the listeners, I will remind, we record this on Tuesday morning, afternoon, depending on time, but that means that the Tuesday slate is not really captured by this, and it is a big one. Kentucky, Louisville, obviously the headliner, but a lot of really good games on Tuesday night. We won't be capturing that entirely. We're a little more of a look back to the week that was and things that stood out from those type of games. So if you're wondering why aren't these idiots talking about Louisville, Kentucky? Well, that's why, because we are recording it beforehand. Maybe we'll do the recurring segment of talk confidently about a result of a game at the end, a game that hasn't happened. So we'll keep that going. All right, well, before we get into our numbers, we got to do our stat of the day, the trivia question of the day for you. And this might be something you've actually looked at, so I hope not, but we'll find out. At this point in the season, you can remove Bart Torvik's preseason filters, and it just gives you results based on what's happened already to this point. Obviously, heavily biased to some bye games for certain teams, small sample size. But there are currently 4 Big Ten teams in Bart's top 10 with preseason priors removed. Can you name those 4 teams?
Illinois, for sure.
Bingo. They are number
Michigan.
1. Michigan is in the top 10 as well.
I'm going to say those two, and then not Purdue. Let me take a stab at it. Wisconsin?
Not Wisconsin, but you are
Indiana.
correct. It is not Purdue. So Indiana is in there, yes. And the fourth team is a tough one.
Oh no, this is going to be one of the what we thought were one of the slop teams. Shit. Well, if you're saying tough one, then I'm going to go Minnesota.
Ding, ding, ding. Well done,
let's go.
sir. Minnesota has been cooking early in the year. Jalen Crocker Johnson, Cade Tyson back from the UNC grave that he was buried in last year. The Gophers looking great so far in Nico Medved's debut. That has me a little nervous for my Mizzou Tigers welcoming Minnesota to town soon. So I hope that Mizzou can scrape out a decent win against a top 10 team. That's what I'm going to prop that up as. Is they're playing top 10 Minnesota based on that metric. A little quick bonus, Will, if you want to. There are also 4 ACC teams in the top 10. 2 that you will definitely guess, and then 2 that are way off the radar that I don't think many people expected to be quite this good.
All right, so Louisville's won because they demolished both of their Q4s.
Yep.
Is Duke high enough?
Duke is 10th. So
okay, I wasn't
just
sure. I
barely in
couldn't
there.
remember their results. I know they were fine, but I couldn't remember if they were. Okay, so 2 more. NC State.
Not NC State, surprisingly.
Really?
A hint for one of these teams is that through 2 bye games, their opponents are shooting 7% from 3. So that has certainly helped the defensive numbers.
Syracuse.
Syracuse is that team with nobody making threes against them. And the other one is also Orange, Will.
There's 32 teams in this conference. I got to think who was Orange. It's either Clemson or Miami then, right?
It is Clemson, and Miami has also been very good in bye games, but Clemson in the top 10. So yeah,
I guess Virginia wears orange too sometimes, so maybe I need to. They have like an orange tint or something maybe in the logo.
Yep, the dark blue with the orange, absolutely. Yeah. But yeah, so you've got 4 Big Ten, 4 ACC teams, and then Gonzaga and Kentucky are the other 2 in the no priors top 10. Obviously, we got a big one with Louisville and Kentucky tonight.
Where's 3-0 Georgia Tech?
Yeah, we're going to discuss Georgia Tech maybe a little. They are not the ACC team that's carrying the banner. But yes, that is the top 10. That is the stat of the day. Well done, Mr. Warren. I think I would give you an A on your guessing.
See, there's no brain fog on this end of the channel, baby. We're good. They're calling him the most fit president or most fit podcast co-host in human history.
We love to hear that because I've probably got a little brain fog from the disappointing Green Bay Packers Monday Night Football effort as I wasn't going to bring it up. Me. I will embrace the disappointment.
I've already emailed Joe House. Don't worry. Just asking for his comments. Good.
I would love to hear what Joe's got to say on that one. Okay, before we get into our numbers, one last little thing, a shout out to Home Field. And it's not our typical ad read here for Home Field because there is the Big Ten We Give Blood Drive competition going on right now. And we want to give a shout out to that. Every 2 seconds, someone in our country needs blood. And when you donate through the Big Ten's We Give Blood Drive and Abbott, you're not just helping your school win $1 million for student or community health, you're also saving lives. You'll also get a limited edition Home Field t-shirt. So show up to the Big Ten's We Give Blood Drive and turn school pride into purpose. I probably won't get to donate as part of this, but I did donate blood a month ago. And I love that they tell you like where your blood got sent. And then obviously identify who it helped. But there's like a sophisticated system now with the Red Cross where they let you know like, hey, your blood got used and thanks for saving a life. That's really exciting. Yeah, I think it's really cool.
They've never done that when I've given blood. That's so much cooler than that. They're usually just like, it's some nurse named Nancy shuffling you out of there really quick. I would love for somebody to, tell me where it went. That's awesome.
Yeah, it was like a 3 weeks later notification or something.
Even if it's a lie, I would like for them to
exactly.
Like, hey, this went to, like Illinois or whatever.
Yeah, you rescued a car accident victim in Chicago. Perfect. Okay.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Yeah. So shout out to Home Field. Go to big10.org/Abbott to find a donation location and get in on the action. it is a great time to go donate blood before the holidays. People are going to need it. So if you have the time and the capability, please get out and do that. And thank you to Home Field. All right, Will, we're going to start off with you and your top number, as if people are new to this, or I mean, it's only the second in-season episode here of stats, but we are going to go back and forth with 7 stats each that jumped out to us. We're thinking of calling it like the 7-man rotation. That's the general idea for the name of the segment. But Will bring his first stat, and I'll go with mine, and we'll just go back and forth on things that jumped out to us. So, Will, I will let you lead it off without any further preamble.
This is the story of opening week to me. And I'm going to narrow it down to one specific number, 78.9. That was the average points per game scored on Saturday, November 8th. The highest scoring day in the sport's recorded history. So this goes back in terms of play-by-play data through 1997. I talked to Ken Pomeroy about this because he wrote his Substack piece about it. And he thinks that this is, at minimum, the highest scoring day in probably 32, 33 years, if not back to the mid-70s. So obviously, the further back we go with data, the harder it is to make sure it's fully accurate, make sure all of the, everything is recorded correctly. But I think this is important because the highest scoring day ever was Monday, November 3rd, opening day of the season, at 76.8. So we blew past it by a full 2 points. I'm very curious to see if this is the way it's going to be, if this is a blip on the radar before things calm down. But even if you drop, so we averaged 76.4 through the first 8 days. Even if you drop that by 2 points per game the rest of the way, that would make this the highest scoring season since 1993, 1994. So I'm, pace isn't up that much. It's up a little bit, but for offense to be this strong is going to cause something twofold for me. One is seeing, can like a great offense stand out from the pack that much anymore when there's all these other great offenses? And two, how do defenses react? Because I think we can agree, if you think of it like a meta game of football almost, the offense is ahead right now. How defenses choose to react to this, I'm going to be really fascinated by.
Yeah, and we talked a little bit about the storylines behind scoring jump last week, just based on the first day being very, very efficient for a season opener. But a lot of free throws and a lot of made free throws. Free throw percentage, the highest it's ever been so far through 8 days in the year. Only the second year it's been above 70%. And then free throw rate also way, way up. So more free throws, more made free throws. That is certainly amping up the scoring. A little bit more offensive rebounding too. But this does link with my first thought, Will. At least I think there is a link to be drawn. And that is that favorites are 55.7% against the spread. And now this is not a betting show. I don't want to like delve into like ATS data or anything, but I think this is telling you how strong the power conferences have been. And this sort of the divide that we're still seeing between the sport. You wrote a lot about last season about how the like top 25 to 40 was as strong as it had ever been in the era of KenPom. And we might end up getting that again this year because I think all these teams know that to juice their KenPom and to juice their net, that amping up the scoring margin, which is a component of all these rating systems and predictive rating systems, it does help. And I think that is indicative of why we're seeing a lot of these bigger and bigger blowouts in buy games. And you could probably try to draw a line towards like the portal and the movement of talent throughout the sport. But I at least thought this would be down a little bit because of losing 2 classes and the teams not having like a bunch of 50-year players to beat up on inferior competition. But it has been a stark divide once again. A lot of this was opening day when teams just are amped up to open their new arena and play in front of a crowd and play a new opponent. But it has stayed a little bit where favorites are very tough to beat, especially at home. And I think that speaks to the power of the power conference teams.
I would be very curious, and we have such an immense amount of people just signed up for the Discord, but also nerd people like us. I would be really interested to see if somebody can pull the data on how many, like the percentage of these covers that are by like 1 to 5 points. So like you think of like, or like games where, and maybe not Vegas covers, but Ken Palm covers more specifically, because a lot of coaches see Ken Palm in the net, for better or for worse, as roughly the same thing. And so if they know that they're favored by, let's say, 26 at Ken Palm pregame, and you get to the final 2 minutes and it's 81-57, you're probably quite a bit more motivated to push that out to 28 or 29 if you can help it. And I wonder, like, how many of these are pure blowouts and how many of these are like, why don't we edge past a little bit and make a lot of marginal gains while we have the chance to? Unless you're like maybe not as much this year, but like if you're an Iowa State or a Houston and you usually trash your Q4s, let's just say you're somebody else and maybe you can, yeah. I mean, like, I'm speaking from experience here. I did watch most of the Tennessee game on Saturday and they played Northern Kentucky. I think like a 27, 28 point favorite. And, 5-10 years ago, I don't think that Felix Okpara would have played the final 2 minutes of that game, but he
Yeah.
did. And then Tennessee, I think, went on a 9-0 run to end it and won by 39. So I wonder how much you're going to see that. And the weird falling out effect of this is, do we see like walk on white guys' chances to touch the court diminished?
Yeah, unless the student section is chanting for their presence, and can they peer pressure their coach into putting the white walk-ons into the game and let them fire away from deep. But I do think, whether it's Rick Barnes himself or the more analytically savvy kind of younger generation of coaches that is very attuned to outperforming your expectations and the benefit that can come from that, where I think that's where some of the blowouts are coming in. Like a couple coaches in the past I've seen actually talk about this, like the value in outperforming their projection. I think Todd Golden has said something about it. Mark Pope has said stuff about it.
Your
Even back to his
Valentine had a
BYU
whole thing
days.
about it once too.
Yeah. And I think that awareness is probably, because of the prevalence of Ken Palm and how it continues to proliferate through college basketball, there's just like a more inclination, a more awareness of what the projection is, whether it's, they're probably not looking at betting spreads, but they know what the projection is for Ken Palm, because they know if they beat their Ken Palm, their net is going to get better. And that matters for NCAA tournament selection. So it's just kind of like this whole waterfall effect. Is it good? Is it bad? That's probably debatable, but it's just it is a real factor, and it's worth acknowledging. So wanted to mention that as well with the dominance of favorites. All right, well, back to you for your second stat. We're not going to snake draft this. We're just going to go back and forth.
Perfect. It's funny you mentioned the ATS data. My second one is actually based on that, and it's something I found in prepping for tonight's Kentucky Louisville game. Actually, so far through the first week, home favorites are 57% in covering the spread, but more importantly, 60% as a single-digit home favorite, so 0 to 9 points. These are
much closer competition, yeah,
alarmingly high. This is, I mean, everything betting and data-wise, and I'm sure you know this better than I do, is almost certainly, with a large enough sample size, between 47 and 53%, one way or the other. It's very rare for something like this to hang on this extreme. Last year's opening week saw single-digit faves, more specifically, go 59%. And then the rest of the way, home win percentage was the exact same it was the last 2 years. So I'm waiting to see, especially in early season, the differences in rosters and continuity in like having to adjust. I compared this actually in a conversation earlier to spending a month straight at the YMCA and you're shooting on the same backdrop over and over and over. And then for the first time in a month, you go outside and shoot on a completely different goal. It just takes a while to get used to that. And then, like, you add into that, you have fans you don't usually see. So I'm wondering if we see this trend continue to hang on or maybe die out like it did last year. I don't know. I'm just curious to see your thoughts on it and where it might go from here.
Yeah, all the little factors add up. I think the shooting backdrop thing is real. I remember going to certain like opponents' gyms and being like, this backdrop is terrible compared to what I was used to in my home high school. I think that's part of like a little bit of travel. And honestly, I wonder if, because of how heavily influential foul calls have been, if there is a little more incremental advantage to being the home team, because the refs maybe get the slight inch of pressure, a hint of pressure coming from the crowds, and that tilts things just ever so slightly more towards the home team. For the future of it, I'm curious if like the market is picking up on this to where the lines get a little farther up, which takes away the edge, and all the ones that are covering by a point or two end up tilting back towards the underdog. And or do these teams get a little more familiar and better at playing on the road, and suddenly this dissipates as well? But man, these like macro trends early in the year are always like really thrilling to me to check out and try to theorize why and track. Is this going to continue? Is it not? And this is one that I think will continue for a little bit until we maybe get more towards like the dog days of even like December, when teams are like, all right, the newness of the season is gone, and maybe there's not quite as much luster to playing at home in front of your crowd, and the road team can come in and be a little more comfortable. But that I guess still remains to be seen as well.
One other aspect of this I do think about as I was driving around over the past week is, with potentially wins above bubble continue to have a bigger and bigger influence on seeding, on selection and stuff. When I ran the data this past offseason, wins above bubble had the strongest correlation to the seeding of any metric used since the committee went to net by a large margin. And so with that in mind, it doesn't really matter how much you beat a team by as long as you beat them. So if we have another year or two where it becomes more and more clear that WAB, whatever, is like the thing that seeds the field or the thing that selects the teams. And I'm not saying it will be, but based on 1 year of data, it sure looks like it might be moving that way. If we see this trend of like, mega blowouts or leaving the starters in all the way, maybe fade out a bit.
Yeah, especially because I've said this to people inquiring about bracketology. I think plenty of like full-time bracketologists will say the same thing. Your own net doesn't actually matter all that much. It's the net of your opponents and who you beat, where you beat them. And so if, like, for instance, last year, Memphis had a terrible net, but they got a 5 seed because they beat a bunch of tough teams away from home and played a really hard schedule. And that was more important. And their WAB was more important than their own net. And I think as that maybe becomes clearer to teams, hopefully I would like to see that kind of become more, it's more important who you beat, where you beat them, which WAB reflects, and rather than like the margin and how much you beat them by. Because for the NCAA tournament, especially for selection, it needs to be about what you did, not what we're predicting you could do. And all the scoring margin stuff is purely included in metrics for predictive purposes. It's not generally helpful for looking back that much.
Yeah.
All right. My second stat is another kind of overarching theme for the season so far, and it is 5. The number 5, that is of KenPom's top 10 player of the year rankings right now. 5 of them are freshmen, a full half of them. Just kind of representation of how incredible this class is. Cam Boozer, number 1, Nate Ament, number 4, Darren Peterson, number 7, Caleb Wilson, number 9, and Koa Pete, number 10. So no AJ DeBanza even in there for people keeping score at home. But you just go down the list of this class, Darius Acuff, Michael Brown Jr., the 2 Kentucky freshmen, Moreno and Johnson. DeBanza has been really good. A lot of the international rookies like Steinbach, DeRitter for Virginia, Jop for Arizona State's been fantastic. We just had a massive Neo Abdallas game for Virginia Tech. He's technically a freshman. Even some of the more like unheralded guys that are contributing for good teams. Trent Sisley for Indiana. Amari Allen was key for Alabama in their win over St. John's. Ibuka Okori for Stanford has become like their alpha already as a very unheralded recruit. It's just been an awesome class, Will. And last year was great as well. And I think there's a lot of hype for this group. But just to see them all like deliver on their potential and a lot of the top guys be as good as we'd hoped they could be, the depth be as strong as it's been, that I think has been great for the sport and probably a little influential on the scoring as well and the efficiency, just having this talented of a crop of newcomers.
Can you say number 4 again really quick?
Nate Ament. Nate, am I pronouncing it right?
You are. Sam Fetterman, do you hear that? Do you hear that? All love to Sam. No, this is a great class. I mean, I was actually listening to Ion College basketball this morning, and they brought up a great point of we had sort of consolidated this class into the big three, right? You know, Boozer, DeBansa, Peterson. And I think the problem with doing that is, even though those guys I would still say are clearly the three best in this class, what it did do, maybe unintentionally, was tell people that the rest of the class wasn't worth paying attention to as much. Instead of saying like, this is the big three and still like a very large 14 following or something. And I think that might be more accurate, is this incoming freshman class, you know, future 2026 NBA draft class, is one of the strongest we've seen in a really long time. I mean, you think about the opening week Koa Pete had, and he's fifth on this player of the year ranking among freshmen. Or Caleb Wilson, who I don't think we can say a bad word about, because it sounds like we might end up on his wallpaper if we do. So Caleb Wilson, we're big fans. We don't want to be your motivation. He's only fourth right now. I'm highly impressed by this group, man. And like you said, it's not just the headliners. It's Okori at Stanford, DeRitter at Virginia. I know that he was a headliner of a sort, but it's different being a headliner coming in internationally and not having constant like overtime, you know, highlight coverage or 247 scouting or whatnot. It's it's different coming in from over there, and you're sort of relying on guys like Armand in the Discord or various other international scouts who know what they're talking about, but you have a hard time comparing that to the traditional high school AAU path. And so it's really cool to see so many of these guys flourishing so early. As always, we will have to wait to see if any of them hit the freshman wall. That usually happens to some of these guys. But even so, through 1 week, I've seen significantly more than I expected to see.
Yeah, we haven't even gotten, obviously, Elijah Arenas is out with his meniscus injury. Braylon Mullins has been hurt for UConn. That's two of the top 12 recruits in the country per some rankings. And everybody else has been, you know, just fantastic. Really great top of the class. That Michigan State Arkansas game, you got Malik Thomas and Darius Acup playing well, but Cam Ward might have been the best player on the floor for Michigan State. Another freshman that's just kind of further down the rankings, but stepping up and playing huge in a big role. It's been awesome to watch this class thrive, and I think it's just great for the sport in general.
Let me hit some more so we're not called out for being biased or something in the Discord.
Good, please.
Trey McKinney, Michigan, phenomenal first game. Keaton Wagler, Illinois, looks the part, to say the least. I know they lost over the weekend, but both Malik Thomas and Darius Acuff for Arkansas look quite strong. I'm impressed by them. Guy further down the list that I think people should get to know pretty soon, Sam Hughes at Boston University. Nobody has heard of this guy, but through week one against, you know, a difficult schedule, or for their standards anyway, averaging 15 and 5 a game. That's pretty good numbers for a true freshman. So
yep,
there's so many good outings that, like, we're not even gonna really mention Kean Anthony at Syracuse looking pretty solid, or, you know, Avdilas, or even a Caden Lewis. I know that he got benched towards the end of that BYU game, but I still thought he had a successful and solid first week for Villanova.
Yep. Like Nishai Hines had, I think, 6 blocks in his debut for Seton Hall, who is now 3-0. He has a 25% block rate through 3 games. That would absolutely shatter every single record ever set for block rate. It's not going to continue, but he also is second on his own team in block rate, which is absurd. They have a 26% block rate for Stephon Payne. It has been tough to score against Seton Hall so far this year. But yeah, the class has been awesome, and that's just kind of the general conclusion. Keep an eye out for him because there's a lot of great players in that class. All right, Will, number 3 for you in your list of numbers.
All right, my number 3, this stat is 5.61. That is your highest jump in adjusted efficiency margin at KenPom since opening night. Could you have any guess who this might be?
I'm trying to think of somebody that, like, even at the top of the leaderboard. Kentucky, NC State?
No, it is Bowling Green.
Hey, now
Bowling Green in Ohio, from 193rd to 129th through 3 games, scoring 80 plus in all 3. And I will note there is a D1 or a non-D1 game involved in this, but still smoked both of their D2 games, or D1 opponents, Texas State and Lemoyne. Not that these are the toughest games to play in the world, but when you're Bowling Green, and I would wager most had you mid-pack in the MAC, lower mid-pack, I don't recall our basket and review rankings offhand, but nobody had them top 4 is what I'm getting at. For you to go out there and beat Texas State by 35 and Lemoyne by 23, hell of a way to start your season, Todd Simon. Forcing turnovers on 30% of opponent possessions, 2 incredible starts from Javante Campbell and Josiah Shackelford. Couple of lucky indicators here. Two-way 3-point percentage differential of almost 19%. That's not going to hold. And I don't really believe they're going to shoot 82% from the line for an entire year. That being said, clearly a lot better than I think I anticipated. Could this be the secret 4th or 5th contender in the MAC to go with the usual suspects? I think it's possible.
Yeah, they've been outstanding to start the year. I know they've gotten like interior defense contributions from Troy Glover. I think Matt hyped him up a little bit in our basket under review preview, and to go with Sam Towns inside, they've kind of got like actual legitimate 4-5 size, 6'9", 6'10" there. Justin Thomas came in from Florida State, a little bit of power conference pedigree. Javon Ruffin from Colorado. There's real talent there, and they've been awesome to start the year. They go on the road to Davidson, host William and Mary, and then a neutral site showcase with Bucknell and VMI, 2 other pretty solid mid-majors so far this year. Curious to monitor the Falcons because, man, what a start. The Texas State spanking in that MAC Sunbelt Challenge was eye-opening.
Yeah, and I still don't think we should even diminish, like, Lemoyne started off that game quite hot. They led after 10 minutes, and then Bowling Green just put belt to ass, and it was over. And they have a couple of intriguing games coming up, as you mentioned, the neutral site ones, but let's not forget December 1st at Kansas State. In a Kansas State team that has looked okay, has needed to shoot 56% from 3 to look okay. I'm not sold, so we'll see how it shakes out for them. But I like when teams like this kind of announce their status early. Like,
Yep.
I know these are some beatdowns of bad teams, but we're a little more serious than are used to taking us.
Yep. All right, my number 3 number is 15. And Will, this is going to be a victory lap for you because that is where Vanderbilt sits in KenPom. After a couple games of the season, you were as high on.
They've called me the Vandy Door. They say I love Vanderbilt.
That's right.
I've never gotten in a fight with anybody there.
This guy's pure Vandy anchors down
this,
type
right?
of guy.
I can't get it right. VU, is that it?
Yeah. Yep. For the audio listener,
yeah, very visual
doing
podcast.
the hand signal. Yes. But they do not feel even remotely in the same class of respect as BYU, Baylor, St. John's, 3 teams that they are higher in KenPom than. They only beat UCF by 12, but they were up by 27 in the second half. That game was never remotely in doubt. They just completely destroyed them. They've scored 1.4 and 1.42 points per possession in their first 2 games. And one of those is on the road at a Big 12 school. I know it's UCF, but still on the road. The offense is pristine. They force a ton of turnovers. They've got depth. They've added a little bit more size this year. The coach has succeeded everywhere he's been. And yet they're still like 150-1 to win the title in odds. Like they just don't have any of the same word of mouth benefit as teams right around them in every analytical ranking. And I guess it's because they're Vanderbilt, but man, this team is legitimate. And I think people should start treating them as such.
Something like if you extend it out to others receiving votes, like 30th in the AP poll, right? So
yeah,
like your average media member thinks of them as an 8 seed, which is kind of crazy to me because, like, yes, I'm aware neither you nor I think UCF is going to be much this year. Lipscomb's got a new coach. I'm looking at the schedule here. Are we going to find out anything about this Vandy team before December? Maybe not. But I don't think it matters because to score 105 back-to-back, even against, like, if you were playing Arkansas Pine Bluff twice, that would still be worth noting. That's still a sign of a really good offense. And to me, the UCF thing, I know only 12, but let's not forget they're only favored by 4. So that's an overachievement, up by 27 at one point. And it's not like they got lucky. UCF shot 56% from 3 in that game. And Vandy still went on the road and won by double digits. I am highly impressed by a lot of what they do. Offensively, watching them play, it just feels like Byington is a step ahead right now. He's figured out that roster already, which is scary because last year it kind of felt like he didn't fully get it until January, and then switch, flipped, and they were on a tear. But I am highly, highly intrigued by what they might be. I do wish that they just played somebody of note. And I'm looking now really quick. They do play in I think Atlantis, right? Is their big tournament?
Are they? Yeah, the one that play Western
Yeah, St.
Kentucky in the
Mary's and
opening
whatnot.
round. Yep.
So we will get to see. I guess I'll take back my statement, but it is on Thanksgiving. So are we going to be watching? Maybe, maybe not. The tree falls in the forest, shit like that. The Vandy thing for me is we're not really going to get a great test of them for a while, but I think we can already say now that through a week and through what we'll find out in Atlantis, it seems like a really good build, offensively especially. Defensively, we'll see. But I mentioned this in the offseason. I loved that Byington more or less looked at his roster from last year, thought he did a really good job, which he did, and said, why don't I just go find all those archetypes again? Because this just looks like 2024-25 Andy, but souped up to me.
Yep. They're skilled, they're shooting, they're spacing. There's even more lineup optionality than they had last year because they've got a couple guys with true center size. But they're starting McLaughlin at the 5, and when they play like that, they're basically unguardable, as two teams have found out so far.
Do you think
yeah,
that this is the greatest time ever to be a Vanderbilt sports fan?
Man, the days of Kevin Stallings and Matt Freege. I guess I don't know how the football team was in that era, but
They were
it's got to be
god-awful
right
when I
up
was
there.
young, so I feel like
Yeah.
it's either this or that one year where they were a 5 seed and James Franklin was their football coach.
Yeah, and unfortunately, didn't they went down in the first round of the tournament, right? Like a 5-12 upset, if I
Yeah,
recall.
maybe that was the year they beat Corey. There's one year they did make the round of 32, but point being, you could make a real argument it's the greatest time in your life to be a Vanderbilt sports fan.
Yeah, well, yeah, the John Jenkins, Festus Ezeli, Jeffrey Taylor team. They went to the second round and lost by 3 to Wisconsin. So that was a golden team. They finished 16th in KenPom right now. This team is one spot higher than that. All right, Will, back to you for your fourth number.
22%. That is Florida's current 3-point hit rate. And I don't think it's going to hold, but we had some questions in the offseason. Basically a 3-man front court all starting together. You don't all return if somebody's not, getting elevated into a starting role. That kind of seems to be what's happening, where you've got Houck, Condon, and Chinyelu all starting and playing the majority of the minutes together. And while I still thought Xavier Lee and Boogie Flan were fine in their opening game, it seems like people are a little more down on Flan than I was. I thought he was okay. It wasn't a disastrous performance by any means. That does bring up our questions about sacrificing that perimeter flexibility that they had last year with a true 3, maybe even an undersized 3 if you had more of a shooting guard, and trading that out for a big forward. So we kind of knew the offense, at least shooting wise, was going to take a step back this year. My question is how big of a step back? Obviously, I don't think they're going to shoot 22% from 3 for a whole season. And it's a good sign they're still shooting 62% from 2. But that being said, I don't know that they wanted to close out opening week with 3 players having made more than 1 3. And that's Houck, Xavier Lee, and Urban Klavshar, who I don't think neither you or I are very high on long term.
No, they talked about during the Arizona telecast, like, oh, he's more confident this year. Like, ugh,
that's not good.
This is more confident him. That's concerning. Yeah, he's 2 for 10 from 3. So he's taking more, but still not making any. That's an issue. Boogie Flan has yet to hit a 3, which is surprising. He also hasn't turned it over through 2 games. That's notable as well. But yeah, the ceiling comes from the guard shot making in this system. The floor is how awesome the bigs are, the offensive rebounding, the interior defense. That's going to be there. But what lifted them to a title was Elijah Martin hitting shots and Will Richard having a couple giant games. And obviously Walter Clayton kind of going mega mind scorer, just being unstoppable with his step backs and side steps from the perimeter. And it doesn't feel like they have that right now. And maybe they'll be, fairly consistent game to game, but do they have the one game ceiling where they can go? Last year they went to Auburn and won by 18 when Auburn, I think, had one loss, and just kind of beat them around, and some of their performances in the NCAA tournament too. I'm not sure whether this team's going to have that gear. I don't think they have it yet for sure, and they're going to have to find it. And they're still working on that guard rotation. Like Alex Lloyd played a bunch in the second game after not appearing at all in the Arizona game. So they're still working out the rotation as well.
And I would note part of this is due to opponent, but the other thing is it's still a really good sign when you shoot 6 for 32 from 3 and beat somebody by 40. You're probably going to be okay.
Yes, that's very true.
You're probably going to. Now, an offshoot of this, and boy, do I feel bad for this team. I need somebody in our Discord to look up the worst point differential after 2 games to start a college basketball season. I think North Florida is going to have a shot because their next game is at Tennessee on Wednesday. You and I both know about Tennessee and Q4s. It usually doesn't go well for the Q4s. And again, their first opponent shot 6 for 32 and they lost by 40 points.
Yeah, that's a concern. That
think
is not good.
We might be on record watch here.
Yep. Mississippi Valley State snuck in a game against the Mississippi University for women. So that broke up their 51 and 48 point losses.
Confusingly, like, has not been a female only university in like 30 years.
Yeah, that's a real misnomer. I want something more self-explanatory as the title of your university.
They've got the Man Show University, but it's been co-ed since 1970.
Yeah, great. Adam Carolla integrated it back, just all right. My fourth number here, Will, is the 39-1 record of the ACC so far. And I know it's early and there's schedule caveats to this for sure. They haven't played a ton of big games, but generally they look much improved. There's not a single team outside the KenPom top 100 right now, which was not the case last season. I will tell you that emphatically. And they just haven't picked up like the bad losses. Their only loss is Boston College in overtime at FAU, a road game. Georgia Tech probably shouldn't be a top 100 team. I don't think they are remotely, but they're currently just barely inside of it per KenPom's rankings. And that's just telling of like, all right, maybe the league is a little bit going to recover. I think NC State looks a lot better. Virginia looks a lot better with their coaching changes. Miami is no longer the toxic waste dump that the team was last year. The middle of the conference still, shaky. I don't know how many at-large candidates are going to emerge from Syracuse, Pitt, Wake Forest, Miami, Virginia Tech, etc. But as long as the basement is not a complete disaster and the middle teams don't drop a bunch of bad games in the non-conference portion of the year, then there's going to be good wins to be had in league play. And that should set up for a deeper performance and more teams getting into the big dance.
Yeah, this is actually my bonus on the list if you had stolen one of mine. So
okay.
This is how, if your entire and we'll see, I mean, it's 1 week and nobody's really played anybody yet, but we kind of saw this early on last year with the SEC having a dominant opening week, dominant month, and then so on and so forth. Already have passed the Big East at KenPom to be fourth, within 2 points of third place Big 12. I don't know that they'll get there, but if you've been an ACC fan and you've been annoyed at the last few years of the conference, this is how you get back to getting 7 bids. Like if the back end of the conference is not terrible, like I still think Georgia Tech is going to end up being well out of the top 100. I still think Boston College will probably be well out of the top 100. But if that's it, if you have 16 teams in the top 100, that is how you get more teams in. Like, I mean, there's a path here where you could be, let's just say, 43rd place SMU, which is actually above the infield zone, but hear me out. But because of being 43rd and you had to play like 59th, 73rd, 74th, 47th, so on and so forth, you've accumulated so many chances at quality-ish wins that you help your wins above bubble in the long run if you just win enough. So it's a rising tide lifts all boats situation. If you can have the bottom end of your conference not just be terrible, just be acceptable and okay, you're going to be in position to get in a surprising number of teams this year. And I think, unfortunately, it really helps them, at least through a week, that the Mountain West might be a little worse than I was anticipating.
Yeah. The bid's got to come from somewhere. And if the Mountain West isn't going to provide any, that's where the ACC can step in. And you've got a couple like notable wins already. UNC knocking off Kansas, flipped the result from last year when UNC lost at Kansas. Virginia Tech getting the overtime win against Providence. That's a ACC versus Big East victory that should age a little bit. Now, we should mention that this Tuesday night before we're recording, Florida State could end up getting pummeled by Florida. We'll see what happens with Louisville, Kentucky. There are some bigger games happening. Wake Forest could get pounded by Michigan. But as of now, as we are recording, only one loss on the ledger for this entire conference. Last year, Louisville had already gotten destroyed by Tennessee. Georgia Tech had a bye game loss to North Florida. BC had gotten destroyed by VCU, an A10 team. And Duke actually already had a loss at this point last year, too, with the early season drop to Kentucky in the Champions Classic. So, or maybe that wasn't Champions Classic. Is that or no? Yeah, it was. And then they played Kansas later on. But so only one loss. That's great. It's time for this league to bounce back, and it looks like that has already begun.
Mm-hmm.
All right, number 5, Will, your 5th stat.
31.2%. And I want you to guess what this might be in context too. So through 2 games, this is Houston's usage rate leader, their percentage. Can you guess which player this is at 31.2%?
I believe it is JoJo Tugler.
It is. It is not Milos Uzan, Sharp, Cianak, or even Kingston Flemings, who's looked really good so far. JoJo Tugler of 2 back-to-back 16% usage performances. That seems like it's through 2 games, and I've got to watch a little more in depth to make sure I'm seeing what I'm seeing. That Houston is trying to put Tugler in the Juwan Roberts role. They go feed him in the post, let him go to work, let him get fouled, whatever. And to be honest, Roberts was not that efficient in one-on-one post-ups the last couple of years. His, value is, drawing gravity or getting fouled, also just really good at getting to his spots. And I don't think we should hit the panic button on this yet by any means. But 31% is pretty extreme. For comparison's sake, nobody in last year's Houston rotation went above 22. That was LJ Cryer. They're usually a pretty democratic offense, I would say. I'm not sounding an alarm. I would never do that with Houston, my beloved Cougars. And I'm sorry to the Discord, because it seems like people really want to freak out about them, which is funny. But just a little weird to see 31.2% for a guy that neither you nor I would ever think about offense first.
Yeah, averaging 13 a game. So all the people are like, oh, he can't be a top 15 player in the country. He doesn't even average 10 points a game. Well, he's up there right now. Unfortunately, he has committed 8 turnovers in 2 games. That's a problem for a guy trying to seemingly trying to play a more featured offensive role. They've only played 2 bye games, and they have only scored a combined 140 points. Like, you'd like to see a little bit more. They don't have the devastating efficiency. They're not even playing that slow. They're just not scoring all that efficiently. 1 point per possession against a admittedly veteran physical Towson team. But I was kind of wanting to see more out of them. Isaiah Harwell hasn't really given them anything yet. He missed the Towson game, and their reserve guards have been not very useful. So they've been trying to kind of scramble to find offense that's not offensive rebounding. And Tugler having a 30% usage, and I think indicative of Kellen and Kelvin Sampson, like, all right, let's try a few things here in these games. And I would say it's a warning sign, Will, but not quite like a panic button. I was surprised they did leap Purdue to take the number 1 spot in the AP poll, with Purdue not losing and Houston not looking very sharp. But they're just kind of figuring it out still. The identity is very much not solved offensively.
Yeah, and I think as the season goes along, they may reorient more around Sharp, Flemings. Uzan, of course, is always going to have a huge role. And people are victory lapping on him already. I would say give him the Bill Simmons settle down juice a little early here. I think he'll be just fine.
It's 2 games into the year.
This is anyway. But like Tugler, I think this is the time to experiment, especially because your next game is Oakland, and I know Oakland just shocked the world by keeping a P5 game close. I've never seen that in my entire life. A Greg Campy coach team overperforming against a P5. They also got their, got demolished by Michigan. So it can really go either way with that defense. I think you got another game of this to like kind of play around, and they may keep doing it, but whenever people are using this stuff as a panic button, I'd like for you to remember. Can you remember for me Houston's record in November last year?
It's like 4-3, right?
4-3. They were
Yeah.
fine.
Yes,
So
they
let's
lost
give
just one
Kelvin
game
the
the rest of
benefit
the
of the
regular
doubt.
season.
It's gonna be fine.
Yep. They're incorporating 3 freshmen. Like I said, Harwell didn't play. I think it's going to be a little more of a process. I mean, I think we're used to them just lighting their Q4 competition on fire, but
Mhm.
it's not quite going to be the same barbecue this year. But I think when they rubber meets the road in the big games, Auburn is their first big one. The defense is going to be there, and just can they produce enough points and be on the glass enough to win that game? I think likely, but we'll find out.
One thing I am going to note really quick on Tugler, it's a wonderful stat. Towson game, 4th game in his entire career, 25 plus minutes in only 1 foul.
Hey, now
That's a step
more,
forward.
yeah, that's like more notable than the usage rate. If he can stay
Yeah.
on the floor for 29 minutes,
5
I don't
steals
know
and a
how you
block in
score.
that game, by the way.
Yeah. How do you score on that team if he's out there for 30 minutes? That's impossible. All right, my number 5 stat is 26, and that's the number of turnovers that Mississippi State had against Iowa State last night at the Pentagon. Think this paints a little bit of a picture about both teams and where they're at right now. Iowa State's, their ball pressure is back. 12 steals led by Taman Lipsey's 3. He seems like he's back in his groove. He's healthy, on-ball menace. I think Toure and Dominic Nelson are both really great on-ball defenders for them. But on the flip side, Mississippi State's going to have to figure out what to do with Hubbard because he is an awesome scorer, but I don't want him having to be the primary playmaker. He had 7 turnovers in this game. He's better like flying off screens and being more of a gravitational force offensively. They need a little more from Jabor McGee, who was, I think, brought in to be somewhat of a bit of a table setter. And then even some of their freshmen, if those guys can provide any playmaking, you need something else from that backcourt. It can't be all Hubbard all the time as the playmaker and scorer, especially against a team that pressures like Iowa State, who is impressive to this point in the year. But I'm at least kind of like keeping one eye open on Mississippi State concern, especially because they gave up 1.3 points per possession and Iowa State was 5 of 22 from 3. So
Yeah,
that's worrisome.
the thing I actually took away from that was less Hubbard and more that Quincy Ballard is way under expectation for me right now. I thought he was awful on defense, and that is frankly not what I saw coming at all. Iowa State 65% from 2. Ballard, 7-footer, routinely one of the best at shot blocking in college basketball at Wichita the last 2 years. 0 blocks, 16 minutes despite a pretty decent offensive day, which I think tells you what Chris Chance thought of his performance. This is it's incomplete, certainly. Mississippi State will kind of figure their way out. I did see a few of their fans starting to jump off the ship already of like, oh, this is an NIT team. This isn't any good. I'm going to just guess that a team with Josh Hubbard on it's going to be okay. But that being said, I am with you, especially on nights like last night with Lipsey having a great performance, with Iowa State forcing 12 steals, which is really notable. You have to be able to use Hubbard more off ball than on. And it, for whatever reason, it didn't seem like McGee was up for it. Sean Jones was just okay. I'm waiting until SEC play to call it on that, but this is part in the good and the bad of my Josh Hubbard first team All-American take is that he had a great game. 25 points, 5 assists, 3 rebounds. You did that the whole year against top 20 teams, you're going to be in All-American talks. But you're not going to be in All-American talks if you lose the games where you go 25, 5, and 3 by 16. So they got to find a number 2, and while I don't think that they need to find it now, they're going to need to find it for January and February pretty soon.
Yeah, there's no Cam Matthews on that team, like the 5-position defender and kind of quasi point guard dribble handoff facilitator on offense. They need to figure out where the creation and playmaking is going to come from because it can't all be Hubbard, as you noted. Just it's too much of a burden for him. Yeah. But Iowa State, sneaky awesome, maybe deserving of more hype than they're getting at this stage.
They're prime on the list of just like teams that people get bored by. Because it's not like there are teams that play the style where you're defense first or whatever. And it's kind of that old um the old Gordon Ramsay meme of like, oh dear, gorgeous versus you fucking donkey on the other end. And it's like I kind of feel like Houston gets the oh dear gorgeous treatment, and from me included, because it's got like Kelvin, you got like all the Houston has been to a national championship. You know, Houston's done all of X, Y, and Z. They have like the history to go with it too. It's also Houston. It's not in the middle of Iowa. Whereas Iowa State just kind of gets ignored because, I mean, Hilton is great, but they don't have like a ton of history or whatever to hang their hat on necessarily. So I kind of feel like people are also looking at the aughts history and waiting for the fall off, and it's just not going to happen. So they're just a prime team for. And the other after effect of this is had kind of an okay closed last year, got smoked in the round of 32. That gets people to forget about you pretty quick. So
yeah, especially with being continuity based, like, oh, you're just going to bring back Lipsy and Jefferson and Momcilovic again. Why am I impressed by that? But
yeah, exactly. So
the
I
defense
think
is still awesome.
Yeah, they're going to be fine. They're going to be good again. Another year of Iowa State being either a 2 or a 3 seed.
Yeah, seems very likely right now. All right, well, number 6, your number 6 stat.
79th. So you and I both, we might know. I don't know. There's too many. 79 Power 5 teams this year. Can you guess without looking who is dead last in 2-point percentage allowed through opening week?
Of those 79?
Mm-hmm.
Oh boy. That's a great question. Who has been outright bad defensively? No, not. All right, I'm gonna concede. I don't know. I don't even have a guess.
Ohio State.
Oh,
They're giving
okay.
up a 62.7% hit rate from 2 against IU, Indy, and Purdue Fort Wayne. Neither is a team that I think we would classify as strong, marvelous down low, you know, elite at getting to their spots. I know the IU Indy system is in vogue right now, but you know, like it or not, IU Indy did lose by 32 to Butler over the weekend and got held down fairly well on that end of the court. It's also alarming to me that IU Indy's played 2 games after playing OSU. Against OSU, 68% from 2. The next 2 against LAU and Butler, 54 and 47. I know that Ohio State's got a bit of an incomplete grade with Ojiewuna out for the time being, and it just seems like Christoph Tilley at center is not gonna cut it defensively. But I think it is, and I know like Bruce Thornton had an amazing game. We have to do the victory lap over that every time. And shockingly, an Ohio State guard has a good game that fixes everything. But when you play IU Indy and Purdue Fort Wayne, and you have a block percentage of 1.3% through 2 games, 1.3%, they didn't block a shot against Purdue Fort Wayne.
That's alarming.
That's alarming. I don't like the setup of this team at all. And I mean, they're 2-0 because they're shooting 80% from 2 and 48% from 3. That's wonderful. Let me go ahead and say right now, they're not going to do that the rest of the year. So if they do, we have the new Golden State Warriors, and we just got to tip the cap. But
yeah, defense doesn't matter if you make shots like that.
If you're like me and you look at this opening week with a little bit of skepticism, and you're in the back of your head thinking, which team can I bet against going forward mentally? Keep an eye out for Ohio State because, like I said, they're not going to shoot 80 and 48 from 3 forever. And honestly, opponents aren't going to shoot 28% from 3 forever, especially if the driving lanes are this wide open and Ohio State has to course correct and slam bodies down low to prevent, you know, layup after layup happening.
Yep, you can't be giving up what they're giving up against the teams that they're giving up. It's not like Fort Wayne has some like maulers inside or the truly electric drivers.
No.
And IU Indy they've got a fun scheme, but as you mentioned, like it was not as sharp against even LIU. They were not as sharp offensively as they were at Ohio State. So yeah, the Buckeyes have some issues to work out on that end, but it's exactly what we thought was going to be the problem coming into the year. So I'm not optimistic that they're going to. I just don't think the personnel's there when your bench is like Gabe Cups and your starting front court is Noel and Tilley, 2 relatively ground bound centers. That's a problem.
They have a real test after we're going to record this tonight, or I guess yesterday when people hear this. They play App State on a BTN Plus at 6:30. App State shot 34% from two against Central Michigan to start the year. If App
Oh boy.
State finishes this game north of 50% from two, there's not enough red flags in the world to start waving.
Yep. It's going to be clear, like defensive panic button. So that is definitely a good one to monitor for. Check the box score if you're listening to this on Wednesday morning. What happened last night with App State and Ohio State? All right, my sixth stat is also from the Big Ten here, Will, and it is 47.5%, and that is the Michigan State offensive rebounding rate so far this year. Like getting nearly half their misses. Yes, they slaughtered Colgate inside, okay, but they got almost half their misses against Arkansas. That is a huge team, both up front, on the wing. They're not just tall, they're burly. They've got veterans in the front court, and they were just all over the offensive glass. And the signs were here coming into the year. I think they got 50% of their misses last year when Carr, Cooper, and Kohler played together. It was not a tiny sample. It was like almost 100 minutes, so like over 2 full games. They're just a physical juggernaut. I mean, Tang, Fort, and Ugachukwu have all been kind of bad at the 2-guard spot, and it hasn't really mattered quite yet because they get all kinds of offensive rebounds. As long as they're not turning it over, they get shots on the glass up until they score. And then the sneaky, like, hello, Cam Ward, the best Cam Ward in sports right now, is the freshman on Michigan State, not the quarterback of the fired their coach Titans. So Michigan State, with that offensive rebounding, that identity, that the floor is very high on a night-to-night basis. And obviously they can even beat somebody good like Arkansas if the Hogs aren't playing at the top of their game.
Yeah, and to be 2-0 in one of those games being over a preseason top 25 team, despite shooting 1 of 14 from 3, highly impressive. I think that they are going to struggle in the metrics a little bit this year because they might not have the firepower to achieve escape velocity often. But
Yes.
That being said, if you rebound the way they do, and honestly, if you get to the foul line the way they do, even adjusted for competition, it's unusually high for their offense. You have a really high floor that allows you to stay in basically any game you play. So next Tuesday, they're going to play Kentucky on a neutral. Kentucky obviously is going to look like a better product, from the eye test. But it wouldn't shock me if Michigan State stayed in that game the whole time or won it outright because they have this formula of we're going to win on the boards. They actually do a really good job at forcing turnovers, a little more so than most Izzo teams, and really damn good at getting to the line. If the shooting ever hits, and occasionally it does, even for the worst Michigan State teams, this is going to be, again, another like you're going to look up in March and you're going to be like, wait, oh, Jesus, that team won 22 games? And you're like,
Yeah.
well, they did. I'm not really sure how to tell you that they did, but they did.
Because you knew coming in it was going to be ugly, like losing Jaden Akins and Jace Richardson off a team that was already 319th in 3-point percentage. You're like, all right, spacing is going to be awful. You're playing Cohen Carr at the 3, but they're just so good on the glass and getting to the line that it doesn't matter. Like they find ways to score, and it's an ugly model. It's very much like some of the worst Houston teams where they couldn't shoot, unlike last year's team that could. Just let's play volleyball on the glass and get as many putbacks as possible. That's been enough, unfortunately, for some people that don't like that eye test type
the
of
toilet
team.
ball game.
Yes.
But I do think we should give some flowers, my virtual flowers, to Jackson Kohler, who has obvious limitations as a basketball player and just continues to be a win provider. The guy is a two-way impact piece, unbelievable on the boards, and never fouls, despite being really good and really physical.
Yeah, he's especially for a team that doesn't have a lot of big man depth. Avoiding the fouls is huge. It's kind of like Kalkbrenner at Creighton. Like he just stayed on the court all the time because he knew how to play with verticality.
Mm-hmm.
All right, no, your last number.
Got one
Pardon
more,
me.
baby.
Yep.
All right, 226th. I just like saying these and seeing if you can guess. Yeah, I don't think you did.
Yeah.
All right.
I'd be a savant if I just do that.
If you did, it would be like when people guess the Wheel of Fortune puzzle after one letter. And you're just, come on.
Exactly.
All right. The question was, Will Iowa play as slowly as Drake did last year? And through 2 games, the answer appears to be maybe not. They're 226th in offensive average possession length, 69 and 63 possession games. We're going to see if this holds because these are 2 Q4s, yada, yada. But consider that 69 possessions would have been Drake's second fastest regulation game of the entire season last year. And even 63 is 4 possessions more than the average. I did take a quick look through the box score. That game was actually on pace for 67 at the half. And then the final 11 minutes of the game, they combined for 16 possessions. They slowed it way down in bench minutes. So it appears that pace might be up a little bit. And I'm curious because to me, part of Drake's strength last year and what I thought might be Iowa's strength this year was controlling the clock better than any team I'd seen in Division One in some time. If they're playing a little faster, it's not like they're setting the world on fire. It's just, you know, when you're using 18 seconds of the shot clock versus 24, it is different.
Yes.
If they're up to that, does that change the dynamic in their games? Like, are they able to run away a little better? But 2, does that take away from their ability to control the flow?
Yeah, I'm curious too, because in my head, this year's team, they're getting fouled so much. That's why the possessions are shorter. But they got fouled a ton last year. Drake was top 15 in the country in free throw rate. I don't think I had fully realized that. And yeah, there's just a little bit more verve to them this year. And I don't know if that's an influence of, all right, we're a Big Ten team, like we're in a power conference. I want to get it going a little faster, or if McCollum thinks he has more talent and is capable of doing this, if he thinks they need to play with a little more tempo to try to blow out this inferior competition and juice their advanced analytical numbers. There could be a lot going into it, but they're barely playing Brendan Hausen. It's still a lot of Drake influence with Isaiah Howard starting. Kyle Coombs is the first guard off the bench. They're playing a little bit of their freshmen. I am surprised at not just that they're playing a little faster, but kind of the extent to which they're playing faster. The possession length is in a different world than it was last year for them. And that's kind of changed maybe the upside game to game, but also, as you mentioned a little bit, I think it lowers the floor because more possessions, they're not controlling it the same way. I think it could be something that bites them against better competition. Now, their first Power 5 game is against Xavier, who is maybe the worst power conference team in the country at this point. There's a chance they're down in that tier after what they've done so far at the start of the season. So we might not know anything about Iowa till Mississippi in late November, and then Big Ten play starts start of December. But whether this continues against the top competition is what I've really got my eye on.
I did go to look really quick. So last year at Drake, fewest possessions touching the last 4 seconds of the shot clock at Synergy was 5 in a game late in the season. Against Western Illinois last Friday, 2. So
wow.
it seems like they're a little more intentional about avoiding the late shot clock this year. But I'm holding out on calling this final. But maybe I don't know if it's criticism or questions, whatever. But they're playing differently than I expected them to.
Yeah, I would agree. And maybe they've got a little more depth than I thought they did. If Sage is useful and Koch has been fantastic, Cooper Cook.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, still a little surprising to me to see where they're at when they were demonstrably the slowest team in the country last year by like categorically a standard deviation or 2 away.
Tony Bennett was just standing up for 2 hours a night saluting.
Yeah.
He had
Look at all these
tears
shot clock
streaming down his
violations.
face like Nick Sirianni at the Super Bowl.
Yeah, exactly. All right. My last stat actually comes from the Big Ten as well. And it is 38. That is the combined number of points that UCLA has won their 3 bye games by. And the one they won by 21 was actually without Donovan Dent. And I'm just trying to figure out how worried to be about this team. Xavier Booker has objectively, statistically been really good, like high block rate, fantastic finisher. Steven Jamerson's getting every single offensive rebound when he's on the court, but they're not making shots quite yet. I think there is a little bit of concern with the defense after a couple of the bye game results, like Eastern Washington over a point per possession. Pepperdine was on 1 point per possession. You'd think a Mick Cronin team is going to like strangle bad competition and hold them to, like last year, they held Ryder to 50 on 64 possessions. Boston U 40 points on 73 possessions. I haven't seen that defensive upside, the terror with this group. Something to that is probably on the wing. They're not quite as turnover able to force turnovers. Kobe Johnson last year was a devastating wing defender. But this year, like the interior is not quite as stout. They're not as switchable. I'm curious where this goes for UCLA because I know Cronin's going to drill it into them, but they've got Arizona on Friday. And if Xavier Booker's not up to snuff on the interior, they could get crushed in the paint.
They seem very conservative to me so far. Like a team that knows they have players, but doesn't really know where or how they want to put them in. I think Booker's been good. Jemerson has been a solid backup. The Dent absence, I don't think is going to seem, like a little bit more of a coincidence that they blew out West Georgia than anything else. But
Yep.
They've been really poor at defending cuts to the basket so far, which is not really something I usually see from Mick Cronin teams, and have not been very good at forcing bad jumpers. They've allowed a lot of jumpers, though, a lot of unguarded jumpers. And it's interesting to me that they play Arizona for a couple of reasons. One, they have allowed a really low attempt rate so far. They're in the 8th percentile nationally in terms of rim attempts allowed per possession. That's really good. They force a lot of jumpers. And we just got done watching this Arizona team in their one real game played take 5 3-point attempts. If you can shut down the rim, like you got something there, but you do leave yourself open to variance. The thing that I'm waiting to see for them, it feels like they've got, to me, 2 things they like, maybe 3. They like Bilodeau, clearly. They like Dent when he's available. And it seems like they like Trent Perry. You need 5 players to play a basketball game. Who are those other 2 guys you're going to like? Are you going to grow in Booker? Are you going to grow in Jamar Brown? Is Eric Daly back in your good graces? Is this your Sky Clark time? Like, it seems like they either think they have 7 starters or 3, and they don't know which.
Yeah, they got to figure that out. Cronin typically likes to tighten the rotation a little bit and go with the guys he trusts, the ones they're actually going to defend. That's pretty much how you earn minutes under Mick Cronin. And nobody's really defending great this year. I know Xavier Booker has a lot of blocks. You can definitely watch him and think maybe he's just kind of hunting those and not always in the right place positionally, which I think has to do with some of the cutting, as you mentioned. Like if he's leaving his defender in the dunker spot, and I think that counts as a cut per synergy if they dump it off to a dunker, that can be a problem. And against Arizona, there's going to be a lot of dunks if that happens. So they got to keep guys in the front on the perimeter, play that perimeter shell, force jumpers like you mentioned, and avoid giving up layups and dunks. Otherwise, that team is going to underwhelm relative to the top 10-ish, top 15-ish hype that they had in the preseason.
Yeah. Now, one thing I'm going to note here is that so UCLA, Arizona later this week, I'm going to wager this line opens at Arizona -2.5. And you're going to have a rush, just an uncontrolled rush of people being like, Arizona 2.5, that's ridiculous. It should be 7. And all of the money is going to be in Arizona. And it just sets up for a perfect 30 times a year outing of, holy shit, UCLA just beat Arizona and we can't explain why.
Yep. Yeah. Oh man, we were also impressed by Arizona in the neutral site game against Florida. They're more battle tested. UCLA's been super unconvincing in their bye games. And yeah, that's one that would just be a head scratcher for people that, I know probably us included, in analyzing it. Like, man, I'm shocked that Arizona didn't crush them at the rim, but if they're not able to get to the rim, if that Mick Cronin shell actually keeps them away, then suddenly this game becomes a lot more jump shot reliant. So that's just a little look ahead. Stats by Will and Jim. We're typically looking back, giving you the numbers, but a little matchup breakdown for Arizona and UCLA on Friday. It is in LA, but I'm not anticipating. I mean, there might be more Arizona fans there than UCLA.
Probably will be. Weird to hold that at the Clippers arena. I don't get it.
The Intuit Dome. Yeah. Are you out on it?
The Aspiration Arena or whatever.
Yeah, exactly. All right. That is it. Anything else you want to add? Will, any bold predictions for Tuesday that people can laugh at while they listen on Wednesday?
Yes. It was crazy to see a really good game, back and forth the whole way, but Louisville by 8 over Kentucky kind of quieted the Kentucky, number one at Ken Palm thing down a little bit, reaffirmed our Louisville belief. Wasn't totally shocked that Creighton did this, but 83-77 loss at Gonzaga kept it really close. Very impressed by them. The one that did catch my eye in a negative fashion for this team, I couldn't believe Cincinnati lost at home to Dayton. That's not a good sign.
Yeah, don't like to see that. And I'm impressed Penny Hardaway went out on the road and beat another SEC team, went to Ole Miss and knocked off Chris Beard. Penny Hardaway finds a way, even though that roster's not that strong. So that's what happened on Tuesday night, folks. You don't even have to go check the stats. Go check the box scores because we're telling you that's what happened. But that's it. That wraps it up for us here at Stats by Will and Jim. We'll be back next week with the same format, going through week numbers that we're noticing from the sport, whether it's specifically from the last week or just a overarching season storyline. That's going to be the general format here. Thank you to Trilly Donovan for giving us the platform to do the show. Thank you to Corey Aldis, our producer, Sam Freyer for our graphics. Shout out to Home Field. Make sure you donate in the Big Ten's blood drive if you can. And that's it. We'll see you next week. Enjoy tonight, Tuesday, and the weekend of basketball ahead. Cheers.